My apologies. This is Tia. I just joined.
You're good, Tia. It's just about to get started.
Okay.
So I think we will just go ahead and get started. Just friendly reminders that if you're not speaking, if you could mute your phone, that would be great. Please identify yourself and your organization before you speak. It helps with the minutes. If you're logged in on the phone and via web, probably best to turn off your computer speakers. And if I don't envision using polling, but the polling is reserved for board members. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order and I'll go ahead and call the roll. Cheryl Kashuba.
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Good afternoon. Avon Bittinger on behalf of Dr. Bogan.
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Good afternoon. Joel Hopkins.
Here.
Antoinette Krause.
Here.
Amy Lowenstein. No Amy yet. Alexis Miller.
I'm here.
Alexis, I know Dr. Conti is not available. Secretary Arkush.
Here.
Here. Colleen Kavanaugh.
I'm here as well.
I thought I saw Colleen. Oh, there she, yeah, okay. And Tia Whitaker.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum and we'll continue. The first thing that we need to do is go ahead and approve the minutes of our October board meeting. The minutes were shared with everyone. I will look for a motion to adopt the minutes of the October 16th, 2025 meeting of the Pennie Board of Directors.
This is Antoinette. I'll make the motion.
Antoinette
This is Tia.
moves.
I second.
Tia seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, minutes are approved unanimously. At this point, before we get into the agenda, we typically break out for public participation as required under the Sunshine Act. We ask that all comments be directed to the chair and be limited to no more than 3 minutes in duration. With that, I will go ahead and open it up for any public comment. Okay, hearing none, we will roll right along. Devin, I think I'm pitching it over to you for some administrative matters. Or the federal update.
Yep, great. Thanks, Commissioner. Yep, we're going to kick right into federal updates. So this meeting really came out of our other meeting in October, where we wanted to have some time to check in on how open enrollment was going, what federal changes there were, if any. And so that's going to be the main focus of the agenda today, is updates on those different pieces. So on the federal side, when we last met in October, we were in the middle of a shutdown where the federal budget had not passed, and there was a lot of discussion of an extension of the enhanced premium tax credits. I'm sure as many people know, in November, the budget was passed without an extension. There was a vote promised on the enhanced premium tax credits in the Senate. Those votes happened yesterday. So there was a Republican healthcare proposal that did not extend the enhanced premium tax credits, and a 3-year extension of the premium tax credits. Both of those failed. So at this point, there has been a lot of talk, but no actual changes to the policy. We also have heard and continue to hear discussion on the House side of a variety of bills ranging from single party to bipartisan bills that are floating around, but there does not at this time appear to be any coalescing around a single bill or policy. What we have been hearing is that anything on the House side is unlikely to happen this month. Perhaps maybe something coalesces by the end of January, but what we've been hearing is that there is still a very steep hill to climb in terms of any extension of the enhanced premium tax credits. So at this time, we have assumed that they are going to expire because we had to move forward with that assumption. So as you all know, consumers have received notices with the higher premiums and the lower amount of tax credits. And all of the premiums reflected on our website are also the higher level. So we'll just continue forward until something is changed. But at this point, the enhanced tax credits do expire at the end of this month.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Devin. Go ahead. Keep going.
I was gonna say another aspect of the federal conversation that we just wanted to touch on briefly here is around program integrity. There have been a lot of discussions and public points around enrollments in the marketplace and whether they are proper or improper. And so just wanted to take a moment to talk about the fact that state-based exchanges are much better positioned to both monitor data trends, identify any issues where there may be vulnerabilities, and address those quickly. There was a recent report last week put out by the GAO that looked specifically at the federal marketplace and identified some pretty broad vulnerabilities there. It's of note that none of the state-based marketplaces were included in that report, and wanted to use that as an example just to demonstrate how we at Pennie have a strong position on program integrity, and we have had that, and we continue to look at ways to strengthen that. So just wanted to hit a couple of high points for anyone who saw that report or who has heard some of that discussion and was curious about where we were in relative terms to that. So just to go through a couple of these, because again, I think these provide an example of how we as a state-based exchange have been able to put in a lot of safeguards to our program to make sure that we have strong program integrity while also supporting strong enrollment with consumers, that is legitimate and proper enrollment. So one of the vulnerabilities identified in the report, and we have the federal marketplace column here based on the GAO report, and that was as of the time of the assessment. Also wanting to note that we have heard from the federal marketplace that they've also made a lot of changes to address some of these that would not have been reflected in this report. But just again, as examples, wanted to walk through a few of these. So at the time of the report, GAO found that there was not a way to prevent duplicate coverage. So if someone already had coverage with a given Social Security number, it was permitted for them to enroll in a different an additional coverage. We do not allow that. We have a block in place where if we see that someone is already enrolled in coverage, we prevent them from enrolling in another plan and direct them to go take action on their other plan. And if they truly want to enroll in something different, they have to end their other coverage first. Another issue that has been brought up is consistent identity proofing, where at the federal exchange, again, as reported in the GAO report, depending on which channel someone used, whether they went through the call center or used a broker, they weren't always asked to go through the full identity proofing process. And this is something that's at the beginning of the application that allows us to make sure that the person creating the account is who they say they are. So we have consistent identity proofing. People have to go through that process no matter which channel they enter the application through, whether it's online themselves, using a broker, or calling the call center. Also just wanted to highlight that, especially recently, we've put in the past year, we've put in a lot more communications to consumers if there are changes made on their behalf by a broker. So if a consumer or if a broker makes a change, a consumer will now get a notice that informs them that there was a change made to their enrollment. And this just allows people to be very much aware of any changes that are happening and to be able to address those if that is something that they were unaware of. That was not addressed in the GAO report, but we wanted to mention it because we think that's a very important part of consumers being informed of what's happening with their coverage. There are times have also been concerns around consistency of multi-factor authentication, especially for brokers. And again, this is when brokers sign into an account, making sure they are who they say they are, that they're not sharing logins or accounts across multiple brokers. We do have that consistent multi-factor authentication where that has in the past been named as a vulnerability at the federal marketplace. Another concern was that there wasn't always documentation asked for the federal marketplace when someone needed to provide that in order to confirm eligibility. We have had those active and in place across the board, so that's another instance where we are not seeing similar vulnerabilities that the federal exchange is. And the last one is the use of web brokers. So the federal exchange allows web brokers to enroll through a process called enhanced direct enrollment. This is a tool they use to increase enrollment by leveraging brokers and their ability to reach consumers that maybe healthcare.gov isn't as able to reach. But it does really decentralize the technical platform and allows brokers to have the whole consumer experience on their website kind of only connecting with healthcare.gov in the background. This is a really big difference between the approach of the federal marketplace and of almost all state-based marketplaces, and that nearly, I think only all but one state-based marketplaces do not allow web brokers to have this full access to the system. And that is important because without adequate oversight, bad actors really can do a lot of, in terms of through automation, really in terms of potentially with vulnerabilities, proliferating potentially improper enrollment. So this is another really important structural difference that we have here at Pennie that really prevents a lot of those issues from happening that sometimes you hear about at the federal level. So I wanted to do, because it continues to be talked about, wanted to do that brief overview here using the GAO report as an example to outline the ways in which Pennie has taken a very strong approach to program integrity, really addressing the issues that we see on the ground and working to make sure that our system, again, has those program integrity protections in place while also supporting strong consumer enrollment.
Very good. Any questions for Devin on those first two federal updates? Not seeing any hands, Devin. I think it was pretty thorough. Let's move right along into the open enrollment.
Okay, great. All right. So now for what we have seen 6 weeks into this open enrollment. This open enrollment has been unlike any other. We haven't, the cost increases are unprecedented. We've never had an open enrollment with this large of a premium increase for consumers. And so we have seen a lot of interesting data. We've been tracking it daily. I'll talk through some of that here. I think the main takeaway, though, that I want to say off the top is that there is a lot left to come, a lot we don't know still at this point that we will not have visibility into for weeks, and in some cases, not for several more months. So I'll walk through what we're seeing so far. One thing is that we have been seeing pretty strong new enrollment. It's lower than last year, about 16% lower than, really the past 2 years where we both years had 90,000 new enrollments. So we've been, day to day about 16% lower than those past 2 years. But it is pretty consistent and pretty strong, especially the last 2 weeks, which we often see a lot of consumer activity leading up to December 15th. I think that I would say personally, I think that's a little higher than what I was expecting, but we have seen continued enrollment, which really shows that people's awareness of Pennie has grown. I certainly think the news coverage of the marketplace over the past couple of months have likely increased awareness to a level where it wasn't before. And, we are seeing some of the outcomes of that in terms of awareness of Pennie and people coming in addition to all the marketing and outreach effort that we've been doing in a more targeted way. On the other side of that is terminations. And really on a day-to-day basis, we're really watching how many new people are coming in and how many people are terminating their coverage for 2026. For a while, mostly through almost all of November, for every one new enrollment we had, we were losing 2 enrollees. Because of the strong new enrollment we've seen the last 2 weeks in particular, that's come up a little bit. So now we're losing about 1.5 enrollees for every one. Again, that's going to likely continue to fluctuate as we go through different deadlines and different times of the month. But wanted to also put that in perspective of what we saw last year. So last year, for every 4.5 enrollments that we got, we only lost 1 enrollee. And now for every 1 new enrollee we get, we are losing 1.5. And again, for a while, that was a full 2 amount. So it's either whether it's 1.5 or 2, it's still significantly different than what we saw last year, where new enrollees were really outpacing those who dropped by 4.5 to 1. As of December 11th, we've had over 46,000 enrollees drop 26 coverage. If there is federal action, many of these individuals would potentially re-enroll if the enhanced tax credits are extended. That number continues to be consistent and fairly high, and would also note that anecdotally, we hear a lot of people are still waiting to make a decision about whether to drop their coverage or whether to enroll. So those again are really the two places, but wanted to do a little bit deeper dive into terminations. So on this slide, we really show two age groups that are the most impacted, and these are as we expected. We have a lot of people dropping in the age group of 55 to 64. And you may recall that the people above the income cliff, the 400% federal poverty level, or about $63,000 for an individual, 2/3 of the people above that income cliff that are losing all APTC are in this 55 to 64 age band. So these were some of the most significant premium increases that we were seeing across Pennsylvania, people paying, $500 a month for two 60-year-old, a couple who is both 60 years old, going up to, $2,000 a month. That's this group. And so we are seeing, people who would be paying 50% of their income towards premiums alone, as you might expect, they are dropping coverage, simply no way to make those numbers work for many of them. The other group we see that we were also anticipating are younger, healthier individuals in the 26 to 34 age band. That's the second highest level. And, when we were thinking about this coming into open enrollment, we were really looking to this group to see what would happen with them in terms of their broader impact on a healthy risk pool. So we are seeing steady, consistent dropping in that age group as well. On the income bands, we are seeing the largest group that is dropping is the 150 to 200% FPL range. That is the group that is one of the most price sensitive. And so, as we've talked about before, even relatively small dollar increases in premiums can have a pretty significant impact on whether they are able to stay enrolled or not. And these are numbers, also not percents of those groups enrolled. So this is sort of a raw data look at who's dropping. On the next slide, this is also looking at terminations. So we're also looking by county, and we have this on our pennie.com/affordability website as well, that does a county by county breakout of how many enrollees were there at the start, how many have terminated, and what percent of that enrollment that reflects. We have been concerned about rural counties because our data was showing that they would be disproportionately impacted with higher premiums than their urban or suburban counterparts. And so we are seeing that of the top counties with the highest percentage of terminations, 70% are rural. Any questions on the termination data? I was going to sort of wrap this all together, but just wanted to pause here to see if there's any questions specifically on the terminations.
Not seeing any questions.
So on the next slide, really trying to tie all these different pieces together. So at the end of open enrollment last year, we had a record high of 497,000 enrollees. Currently, in balancing out the new enrollees with the terminations, we've been holding fairly steady with fluctuations between 465,000 and 472,000 total enrollments. As I mentioned a minute ago, we are hearing that many are waiting to decide whether to drop, enroll, or change plans given the federal policy uncertainty. And so we are feeling very uncertain about where these numbers are going to go, and it is very difficult to determine where these numbers are ultimately headed. Remains to be seen if the failed votes yesterday in the Senate will have any impact on terminations, and also as consumers receive their January bills, when those come due, whether that has any impact as well. I think it's also important, given the number of terminations we've seen and the number of new enrollees, to think about it not in terms of, are we going to stay at where we were last year, but where we would have been in terms of enrollment if the enhanced tax credits had stayed in place. So using what we know about consumer behavior so far, looking at the patterns we've seen in the past, we think that if the enhanced tax credits were still in place, we would likely be at another enrollment record, likely between 510 and 520,000 enrollees by this point. And we're not even into the busiest enrollment days with December 15th, and we still have a month and a half of open enrollment ahead of us. So really comparing where we are now to where we would have been, kind of see the gap widening. And again, we really are not, we don't have a lot of insight into sort of what lies ahead for the rest of this month in terms of terminations. We are expecting to see that number continue to grow. It certainly hasn't lessened, but additionally, if as the odds of something on the congressional side look lower, as we continue to see news stories come out about that, that might also impact termination numbers. From a consumer messaging standpoint, at this point, we are encouraging people to act now and not to wait because we don't want them to miss the window to take the action that they need to. So we are really messaging to people that if they, that they shouldn't be waiting for congressional action, they should be making the best decision for them and their family at this time with the enrollment windows closing for January 1st coverage. And we've also been communicating that if something were to change on the federal side, that we would give people more time to come in and change a decision. But again, it is very unprecedented dynamic here. And so it's very hard to see where these numbers are going to go ultimately. Dr. Arkush?
Secretary Arkush?
Devin, thank you so much for this. It's really interesting. And I was just curious, and maybe we're not far enough along for you to really answer this yet, but of the people that are re-enrolling, are they selecting a less expensive metal plan? Are they kind of moving down the benefit coverage?
Some are. We didn't see a lot of that initially because the numbers in November tend to be lower just in terms of volume, but we have started to see that shift into bronze and just sort of shifting around on those. So we are really interested to see what comes after December 15th to see if additional people have shifted in that direction. We have seen our percent of people under $1 go up slightly. So that has always been about 20% of our enrollees paid under $1. When we renewed people, that dropped down to around 4, and now it's inched up to 7. So I think that's people buying down to lower premium plans like the bronze, kind of looking for that really low monthly income, monthly premium. And so we are seeing some of that movement, but it hasn't been a massive shift, but we are seeing it.
Thank you.
Any other
So
questions for Devin on this slide?
And the last
Okay.
piece I wanted to talk about briefly is the call center impact. So we have seen a significant amount of consumer activity, a lot of volume, a lot of questions, a lot of people working through what these cost increases mean for them and their family. And that has resulted in, again, a lot of consumer activity, and especially at the call center. And we have seen some real strained resources on that front that we are trying to work through and try to bring that back together, but wanted to just talk about some of how that's been going so far. And to do that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Lesko, who's our Director of Operations. He joined us a few months ago, has been doing a fantastic job on the operations side, and is going to provide an update on the call center. Jim.
Hey, thanks, Devin. Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, from a call center standpoint, our contact center, it has been a very busy OEP, which was not unexpected given, I think, some of the concern and all the changes going on at the federal level. Through Wednesday, December 10th, year over year, our contact center call volume is actually up 18%, which sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. But we had planned from a staffing standpoint to handle up to a 20% increase in volume. So Get Insured had been assuring us all summer, well into the fall, that they were going to increase our CSR roster by 10% from 255 staff members last open enrollment up to 281 this open enrollment. And again, that was done with the assurance that 10% increase in staff could handle a 20% increase in volume and continue to meet or exceed SLAs. So we felt very confident with that number throughout. Unfortunately, that 281 to start OEP did not come to fruition. We were closer to 216 staff members on November 1st. And of course, that's led to a lot of our challenges of strained resources, as Devin outlined. Get Insured has been working to reach that number since then. We're closer to 300 now. We have another 30 that are going to hit the floor today. With the rush for Monday, we're hoping to have 350 rostered with some volume of 313, I think, scheduled for the high points during the day. Now, candidly, bringing on that number of staff at this stage of the game is problematic at some points and concerning. And so we have seen some quality issues as GI tries to get new CSRs to the floor. So as we work through that, we continue to monitor daily, hourly, if we're being honest, and probably even more often than that, and continue to voice all of our concerns with GI to make sure that our Pennsylvanians are cared for as best as possible.
Jim, are the number of staff that you mentioned, is that Pennsylvania specific, or is that lift other states that also use the GI platform?
It's a fair question. The number that we're quoted at specifically is Pennie specific. That's the Pennie client roster. That's what we're told.
Okay, great. And you know what like the wait time today looks like versus prior open enrollments?
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe it is, and I'll give you the specific numbers, but I've been looking at it like this year we're measuring our ASA in minutes. It's previously been in seconds. Right now on our consumer line, through 12/10, it's been about 14 minutes on average, and the assistant broker line has been 18, whereas those are both under 30 seconds in years prior, in OEP prior.
Wow. And that's until you get to a real person?
Yes.
Okay. Tia, I saw your hand go up.
Just as a point of reference, I called the call center at 10 o'clock this morning, and it was 48 minutes before I got to a live person.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. I think if I look at it right now, our average is 38 minutes for today. So yeah, unfortunately, when we kind of stretch out those averages, we're looking at, there's some Saturdays in there, some lower volume days, some 8 a.m., some 6 p.m. But yeah, we have certainly, I think, unfortunately, when your average is as high as it is, you're going to have, the individuals, whether on the consumer line or the AB line, that do experience those significantly higher wait times. And that is certainly frustrating as we go
Yeah, for
through.
sure. I understand we're also headed to the 15th. So just like to check in personally to see where things are. But thanks.
Completely understand. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Jim, do we have that functionality where like you can leave your phone number and you stay in line or whatever?
Yeah, we have our courtesy callback functionality that's offered to folks as they wait through the IVR. And you do have the ability to go ahead and request that callback. We try to get through them as we go. The expectation from the vendor is that they're making all those calls prior to the end of the day, that those are getting through. We did receive some feedback from GI that they're at about a 90% connection rate. I'm just looking at, about 90% connection rate. And they're including connection rate as also if they have to leave a voicemail. But through Wednesday, we've completed about 22,000 plus of those courtesy callbacks.
Okay, I saw Antoinette's hand went up and then down. Antoinette, did you
Oh,
have a
yeah,
question?
sorry. No, I think Tia covered what we're seeing, and I would just flag for folks on the assistant line. Our team's still waiting an hour plus, so we're losing a lot of folks that come in for appointments, and we need to claim accounts. And I flagged this for Devin yesterday, but the folks we were working with were not getting calls back. So I think it's just important for us to really monitor that because it doesn't seem to be translating necessarily to what's happening on those one-on-one consumer interactions. And it's causing problems at a time where we don't need any more people to walk away.
Yeah, completely. And Antoinette, to just be transparent with you, if you'd like, I'm happy to look into any of those individuals. If you have a date or a time or anything like that that you can share, I'd be happy to go back and try to see what maybe went wrong with those calls and why your sisters weren't contacted.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And
Of course.
Jim or Devin, is there an opportunity? I mean, some of the reason that everyone's coming in now is the deadline. So could like the background music or whatever happens when you're on hold let people know that they do actually have 2 more weeks to enroll for January 1 coverage?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think again we've been trying to push towards the 15th just so that folks are
Yeah.
understanding of those deadlines. But I will say we do have already submitted the request for GI to update the IVR as of first thing Monday morning, so that if you call in at 8 a.m. Monday morning or at any point during that day, you will be informed that we've extended OEP. And if you don't have, the half hour to wait or whatever it may be, unfortunately, in that time, or you're not ready for the courtesy callback at that moment, you'll be alerted at least as soon as you get in the queue that, hey, take a breath. We have an extra opportunity here for you over the next couple weeks.
Other
Is there
questions
anything else
for
I
Jim?
can try to answer for anybody?
I don't see any other hands, Jim.
All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity to kind of get in front and talk about this a little bit. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And so we wanted to talk also about looking at the enrollment numbers that I mentioned earlier about how some of this we may not know for not only weeks, but months, the early months of 2026. So on the next slide, wanted to cover some of the other topics that we're tracking and sort of why some of that will not be as the full picture won't really be clear until we get further into 2026. So for some context, in the past several years, we have really stayed pretty close to our end of open enrollment number throughout the special enrollment period months. So through February through October, we've seen some, a little bit of decline, but really from after the unwinding, when we have a steady flow of applications coming in from Medicaid and the low income special enrollment period and all the other special enrollment periods have really sort of kept volumes up. And then also with the affordability, people have really kind of been able to maintain their coverage. So a lot of those things or a couple of those things are changing for as we head into next year. And so I wanted to highlight a couple of those. One is that we are seeing lower effectuation rates. For context, the first roughly 5 years of the marketplace program before enhanced tax credits, and in the federal exchange, remember their typically effectuation rates were in the low to mid 80%. But since enhanced tax credits have been in place, those have really been in the high 90%, meaning almost everyone is effectuating their coverage, paying their premiums, having it be active. So without the enhanced tax credits and those higher prices, people really stretching more to be able to pay their premiums, we are anticipating that we will see lower effectuation rates. When we talk about our open enrollment numbers, we talk about them in terms of plan selection. So how many people have selected a plan and clicked enroll. It doesn't mean they have effectuated yet. So we are likely to see more drop off of people who ultimately do not pay that first premium to effectuate it than we have seen in the past several years. Already we are trailing about 11% down from where we were at this point last year in terms of effectuation. So fewer people are signing up, but fewer are making that decision to pay their first premium. So that will ultimately lower some of the numbers that we're seeing in terms of plan selections that we talked through today. For that, that's really focused on people who make a new plan selection, so existing consumers who change their plans or uninsured people coming in for the first time. For the group of existing enrollees who roll over into next year and perhaps passively enroll into next year, what we're looking at for them is the non-pay terminations, people who simply terminate their coverage by way of not paying that higher January premium. Because they have APTC, they do have a 90-day grace period. So we will not have the full picture of how many people who are current enrollees stop paying their premiums in January until March and early April. So we are really looking at sort of not until end of April, early May, really having a full picture of how many people fully are enrolled and paying their premiums and effectuating their coverage for 2026. And just adding to that with the tighter regulations that remove the low income SEP, it does mean we're going to have lower amounts of backfill new enrollees coming in during the SEP window that would normally kind of buoy those enrollment numbers throughout the SEP time. So wanted to again provide this picture. We're not going to meet again until February, so really wanted to talk through when we have that January 31st number of how many people selected plans, the story is still not complete at that point, as we will see these other factors coming in the following months after that. And as an additional reminder, not just in the next few months, but in the next few years, we have additional changes coming up. We have further reductions in eligibility for APTC next year in certain lawfully present immigration statuses, losing eligibility for premium tax credits for the first time, a shorter open enrollment period, which we'll talk about more in February, that's required under the new regulations. And then the year after that, a new pre-enrollment verification process, all of which will impact enrollment numbers in the long term. So on the next slide, we said we were going to circle back on a couple of the ideas we talked about in October, just to see if we thought they would be relevant or helpful at this time. So we have two of those here. One was looking at providing additional time for people to enroll if they had high premiums, and there was some discussion around whether this would be applicable with enhanced tax credits or not. And then if enhanced tax credits were implemented late, after November 1st, kind of creating an automatic 60-day SEP. At this point, we are not recommending moving forward with either of these policies because we did have those deadline extensions agreed to in the October meeting for the first one. So we think going through January 31st will provide a lot more time already for people who have those higher premiums to make a different choice. And on the late enhanced tax credit, at this point, again, steep hill to climb in terms of an extension happening. And if it does, some of the language we've seen in some of the bills are that there would be a legislative extension of the open enrollment period. So at this time, we would want to hold off until we know for sure what federal policy happens, if any, and then make a decision at that time. So just wanted to close the loop on these two topics and see if there's any questions on them.
Devin, remind me the back end of open enrollment. Did we move January 15th?
Yes, so we have two deadline changes. One is allowing people to enroll in January 1st coverage all the way through December 31st. And we are, still pushing December 15th because we want to try to get as many people in as possible so they get their insurance cards, and we'll be broadly communicating the extra time on December 16th, except at the call center. As Jen mentioned, we'll be doing that a little bit earlier. And then in the January side, yes, we will have a full extension to the end of January, January 31st, giving people all of January to kind of process if they missed the notices, if they missed the January bill, if that's sort of recently hitting their bank account, giving them that full month to determine what their next course of action is and change their plan if they need to.
Other questions for Devin? Seeing none, Devin, I'll turn it back to you to move on to the next agenda item.
Great. Okay, so the next one is health equity accreditation regulation. This one, there's been a bit of a background that goes back a little further, so I'm just going to walk through that briefly. Since we were meeting here today, we wanted to take this opportunity to come to a resolution on this topic. So as background, in August of 2022, the board did approve a motion to create a regulation requiring insurers to receive and maintain health equity accreditation with the goal of ensuring access to coverage across various populations. And in May of 2024, we submitted a proposed health equity regulation to the Independent Regulatory Review Commission. As additional context, since 2022, a lot of different things have changed. We have really done a lot of effort to understand the uninsured in Pennsylvania at a deeper level through data analysis, surveys, and focus groups. We have undertaken a project to assess brokers and how well they match the populations they're serving. And we did find through that effort to both expand brokers and align them to the populations they're serving that they actually are fairly well aligned. We do have good representation across young adults, Hispanic populations, Black populations, Spanish speaking. The one area we identified in that report was that we could use some more in rural areas. So that's an area that we're focusing on next. And then also have really been working to improve the understandability of our program through a focus on plain language and health literacy. We've done a lot of targeting and, again, analysis of the Pennsylvania uninsured population to make sure and address some of those populations that are disproportionately uninsured. And we have seen progress there. So since 2021, Pennie enrollment increased by 47% overall, but in several of these populations, enrollment increased by more than that. Hispanic enrollment increased by more than that. Black enrollment increased by 77% compared to the 47%, rural by 54% compared to 47%, and young adults are also tend to be disproportionately uninsured, and they increased by 58% to 47%. Also, broker engagement has grown and generally reflects the population served as well. So where does that leave us at this point? So on the next slide, we walk through our proposed approach, which is really to focus Pennie's efforts on the areas that are directly within Pennie's purview. And these are areas where we feel like through experience of the last few years, we've really been able to have a direct impact on addressing populations that are disproportionately uninsured through outreach, education, more and more sophisticated data analytics, and customer support. That really allows us to continue improving our ability to reach the uninsured and improve access to enrolling. Some of the things we've talked about recently continue to further our efforts in this area, including the statewide assister contract, the new structure there that really regionalizes and allows for more local population outreach. Our 3-year uninsured plan that really looks at both broad-based and tailored outreach messaging to reach a wide variety of populations. So because of our progress and our ability over the past couple of years to really focus on how we do outreach to various populations across Pennsylvania, really finding and testing out and using best practices of how to reach different populations, we are at this point recommending to not move forward with the health equity accreditation regulation, and instead continuing to focus our efforts on areas in which Pennie can take direct steps to reach and enroll the uninsured across many different populations, where we can clearly measure the outcomes tied to those steps, and where we can be flexible to adjust to new learnings and program changes, which will especially continue to be true over the next couple of years. We'll note that about half of the insurers that participate on Pennie already have health equity accreditation, and so this is an area that insurers can continue to consider moving forward.
Any questions for Devin? Seeing none, and as we initially approved this via board vote, would be looking for a motion that really, because Pennie's efforts in closing insurance gaps across populations have been successful, to authorize Pennie to not move forward with promulgating regulations on the health equity accreditation.
Joel Hopkins, so moved.
Joel moves. Do we have a second?
Val, I'll second.
Secretary Kush seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the motion carries. Appreciate that work, Devin, and appreciate the continued work that Pennie will do in this space. With that, I'm actually going to change the order on the agenda, and we'll now adjourn the public meeting. So don't need people to kind of stick around on this one and plan for us to come back. We're at the end of the agenda. We'll now have a brief executive session limited to discussing legally privileged and confidential matters, to seek legal counsel, discuss personnel matters, or to review or discuss agency business that's legally protected by law. So with that, I will hold the public meeting adjourned and would ask that board members join the executive session link. And I will see you there in a minute. Thanks, y'all. Have a good holiday.